This program and its contents are designed for information and educational purposes only. This program does not render medical advice or professional services and is not intended to be a substitute for professional care. The information provided here should not be used for the purposes of diagnosing or treating a medical or psychiatric condition. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, consult your healthcare provider.
This program is brought to you by Movement Solutions and Soaring Wings Vineyard and Brewery. I'm Diane Silva, and today my guest is Captain Jim Shaw of Soaring Wings Winery and Brewery. You know, we hear a lot about accidents and, you know, the Malaysia Airlines who go away, and the media tends to really blow these up because they are, I don't want to say catastrophic, but they're big events. I mean, you got more car accidents in one day in one state than you do on a year's worth of airline accidents, or even near misses or near hits.
Yeah, even flying on the airline with the worst safety record in the world,
right?
Probably some of the African airlines.
Okay.
You'll have a lower chance of getting hurt or killed than you would if you drove.
Right.
So even the worst is much safer than driving.
Well, yeah, and when you're flying, you have the captain, the co-pilot, and you know you have a nice crew who's actually trained to do this.
Yes.
Where if you're on the road, you got people texting, you got people, you know, eating, doing their hair, doing their makeup, yelling at their kids, you know, swerving in and out of lanes. Who knows what you're dealing with?
Yeah.
You know, and every minute you're dealing with different people.
And the pilots, both men and women, are extremely highly trained. Particularly in the United States, North America, and Europe. Mm-hmm. You know, the training is so extensive, and the experience is really there. And you got to remember that as pilots, you know, we're the first to arrive at any accident scene. So as pilots, we don't want to have anything bad happen, and we all really feel and care for our passengers. Okay. I take it as a great responsibility, the lives that are in my care when I'm flying people around the world.
Well, and that's good to know. And the other thing I would like to point out, and you can help me get this message across, you want to go home. You're not out there to, you know, oh, I don't care what happens, I'm having a bad day, who cares? Okay, I may be having a bad day, but I still want to go home, you know. Well,
true. And, you know, there's an old saying, there are old pilots and bold pilots, but there are no old and bold pilots.
Gotcha.
By the time people get to the airline business as pilots, most of them have been flying 10, 15, sometimes even 20 or 30 years. So we're no longer old and bold, you know. Any bold pilots would never make it that far where they're carrying passengers like that. So very well trained, and you can put your lives in their hands and know that they're going to try to take the best care of you they possibly can.
Which kind of brings me to a point about, we have a fear of flying support group, and I had posed some questions to the people there, you know, knowing that I was going to have you on. And one of the questions they had asked is, now I lost my train of thought, where was I going? How do we get to meet the pilots? You know, if we're having some anxiety, you know, just getting to know who's who's the bus driver, who's driving this plane, may help us. Is there a process we could go through to be able to, meet and greet the staff or the crew? And
absolutely. I know at the airline I fly for that we welcome people to come up into the cockpit as long as time is not too critical. Sometimes we have kind of quick turns and it's difficult, but the best thing to do if you're doing it the day of flying is just to go up to the gate agent and say, look, I have a little bit of fear of flying. Is there any way you can ask if I can talk to the flight crew, you know, maybe board early? You know, because they usually, most airlines have an early boarding for people who need more time. And can I just say hello to the cockpit crew, because it would help alleviate my fear of flying. Most people who have a fear of flying don't want to board early, though.
Right.
They'll want to tend to board right at the last minute because there's less time in that airplane. So at that time, the pilot's getting ready to close up the door. It's not the best time to do that. But at least if you don't board too late, you can talk to the first flight attendant when you come through the door and say, I've got a little fear of flying. Can I say hello to the pilots? And I don't know of a pilot that would have said no to that if they knew about it. So. They would be happy to talk to you.
I've had that experience, and the pilots, every pilot I've met has been great. And one of the things I've learned during my brief training to become a pilot was, you want to talk about flying, talk to a pilot. They love talking, it's their passion. And so you're sharing your passion with us, which helps to alleviate some of our fears, because in fact, how can you be fearful of something somebody's so passionate about? You know, nobody's going to be passionate about throwing knives. I would hope not, anyway. You know?
Not at me, I hope.
Well, not at anybody. So, if you could give anybody, okay, let me rephrase this. You've dealt with a lot of travel. You've flown all over the world. You've seen the passengers. You know, I mean, as a pilot, you do see some of the passengers. What recommendation would you give someone who is fearful? You know, we've seen where people have drank, or you know, they've seen psychiatrists and they've taken medications and whatever. You know, sometimes we overdo it because you know we are so nervous and we're not getting the response right away, and we eventually, you know, we're either inebriated or knocked out, which is not necessarily a good thing. You kind of want to take that and address that a little bit.
Well, I think you know the path that you've been chosen is a really good way to go. Talk to therapists that address your fear, your anxiety, and find ways to gradually reduce that. And most major airlines have some ability to help you address that, or it can point you in the right way. After you've done that, if it's the day of flight or you're getting ready to fly, you know, having a drink or two is okay, or you know, some slight medication. But like you said, you don't want to overdo it. If you overdo it and you're unconscious, you can't fly. They'll remove you from the flight, because if there's ever an emergency, you want to be able to get off the airplane.
Right.
And there may not be anybody to carry you off.
Right.
So I've only had a couple cases in my career of people that felt that they had to go to that degree, you know, and it's, you feel for them, but if that happens, we'll get them off the airplane and get them on the next airplane where they're feeling a little bit better and gotten past that point. So. But it's something you got to keep an eye on, over-medicating or drinking. Yeah.
Right. So with this program is brought to you by Movement Solutions and Soaring Wings Vineyard and Brewing.